Mobile phones, is the world going crazy? Find out in just a few seconds. What's up YouTube, Dave here with Seen Through a Lens, and thanks for stopping by the channel. And if you haven't stopped by before, please be sure to click on that subscribe button and click on the bell icon so that you can be notified of all my new videos. So guys, mobile phones, has the world gone crazy? Well, kind of in a word, maybe. I mean, I've had mobile phones since, I'm going to say, like the late 80s, and these things were huge. They started off like suitcases. You had like this big battery pack and a big transceiver, a handle which was like a telephone handset, and a big aerial sticking up. And these things, you know, you'd carry them around like a suitcase, and the battery, I don't know, would last maybe half an hour if you were lucky. And you know, all we did on these things was talk. There was nothing else to be done. It was a mobile phone for talking to people. And then, you know, over the years into the early 90s, you know, things started to scale down, and you know, handsets started to become a little bit smaller until we kind of moved through the 90s and handsets became really small. And that's what we wanted. We wanted these tiny handsets, mobile phones that we could put in our pockets, and then, you know, maybe a little bit of text message started to come. And you know, these things were fine. You know, we were texting, we were talking on these things. Battery life, you know, you'd probably get through a day or two, and we were really content with that. I mean, you know, when the phones were bigger, I mean, some of the, this is well, actually it's a battery extender, so you used to plug this into the car cigarette lighter. This would go on in the place of the mobile phone, so it was like exactly like the battery for the phone. And this is for a Motorola StarTAC phone. You know, the phone that kind of looked like the communicator from Star Trek. So that's what this was for. And then this was from a Panasonic phone. I think it was called an EB3610 or something like that. I actually thought it was called an F1 for a long time, but you know, that's what that was for. And this was from an NEC P3. So these batteries, again, you know, would last maybe half an hour, a couple of hours at the most, you know, talk time and standby time. So you definitely had to go around with one of these things that plugged into the car lighter, or a couple of these to get you through the day. But then, you know, just put them over there. But then, yeah, phones started to get smaller, and we loved it. I mean, we had things like this, the Ericsson T28 or T68, I can't remember what it's called, T28S. That's what it's called. Push a button. How cool is that? You know, okay, you had this kind of aerial which was a bit annoying, but this thing was like thin. The battery would last for at least a day, at least, and you could text on this and you could talk on it. I mean, perfect. That's what we wanted. We wanted a mobile phone which freed us from wires and cables. You didn't have to have a suitcase or some kind of, you know, battery arrangements and things like that in order to you know, use the thing throughout the day. And these were perfect, light, dependable, and you know what, fairly rugged. So I mean, would you want to go back to something like this again? I mean, this is what we wanted. Then we had things like this. I mean, look at it, it's tiny. I mean, this is a phone. You could get up some, you know, text messaging on here. The battery would last again for, you know, a couple of days. In fact, this one is not actually the proper battery pack on the back. This one actually had an adapted 2 SIM card. This was a conversion that was made specially for having 2 SIM cards, but that's another story for another life. But you know, batteries, oh, still got the battery in here. Actually try and get that out, but it's probably been welded in here for all these years. I mean, that was the battery, you know, that compared to that, and it would last probably 3 or 4 times longer than that. So, you know, the battery technology was already getting better. So, I'll just pop that back together. And then we had, you know, another version of that phone, a later version. This one you could actually clip these covers off and customize the colors and all the rest of it. And again, you know, little tiny phone made by Nokia. You know, you could talk on it, it was clear, you could text on it. I think you could get some mobile web pages on here, and that's what we wanted. So we've gone from massive phones that kind of reduced in size over time to getting down to these tiny, thin, very, very pocketable devices that actually all we wanted to do was to have a conversation with somebody. And as we kind of rolled through the years and we've gotten to 2019 where we are, we're back to these things. We're back to huge phones again, and I don't really know why, because well, maybe I do know why, because these aren't really phones anymore. These are kind of like mobile, I don't know, media consumption units. We're watching TV, we're watching videos, we're watching Netflix. Don't want to do any shameless plugging, but you kind of get the point. And these are like 6.4 inches, 6.5 inches, and we're kind of getting to, oh, just turn the flash on there. Don't even know how to turn that off. Let's do that. So yeah, we're getting to huge phones that aren't pocketable anymore. So why is that? Well, I guess the reason is that these aren't phones anymore. These are media consumption units, or devices. These are for browsing the internet. These are for watching movies and Netflix and TV and whatever. They're not for making calls anymore. I would hazard a guess that, yeah, my generation, we pick the phone up, we still want to talk to somebody. The younger generation, they don't. It's all messaging, it's all social media, it's all media consumption. These are no longer mobile phones. So now we're into these mobile media consumption devices. What's the killer app? Well, for a while it started off by being the camera. So we put a camera on a phone. Fantastic, because you know what that did? That started to displace these things. Portable compact cameras. That's what we started to do. So now we're consolidating our devices. No longer do we have to carry a computer with us unless we've got some proper computing work to do. For all of our hobbies, social media, browsing the internet, messaging our friends, watching media, listening to music, we've got complete consolidation. And that's good, isn't it? Well, it is in a way, but it's bad in a way as well, because these things, well, this thing is so expensive. So the killer app for me now is the camera. Everything about these phones are to do with the cameras. This phone's just come out, the iPhone XS Max. All we're talking about is the camera and the processor. I mean, the rest of it is kind of like the same as last year's. So how have we gone from spending, a couple of £100 on a very good camera? I mean, this has got a Leica lens, and it's made by Panasonic, and it's got a whole bunch of features and functions and all the rest of it on there, including video recording. And we've gone to these things which cost, like £1,000+, and that flash has come back on again. As you can see, I'm not used to this. But we've gone to these things that cost £1,000 for what? To have a better camera. But is it a better camera? I don't know. It's a useful camera. So we've kind of gone from displacing a decent camera, compact camera, costs a couple of £100, to having a camera in our pocket in a very fragile unit which costs £1,200 or £1,300, or I mean, the costs are ever increasing, and I kind of think we're going a little bit crazy. So where will it all go next? I mean, what is the next killer app for the mobile phone? Is it the folding phone? I mean, we seem to be hearing a lot now about these folding phones. I saw the demonstration of the Samsung folding phone and also the Huawei one. And I mean, we're kind of going back to the big, thick device again. And I just don't know what we're doing as a nation, as a bunch of people. We kind of can't seem to make our minds up exactly what we want. These folding phones, I've heard that the Huawei one is going to cost like over £2,000. So, so we think that these things are expensive, and we're going from, £1,300 to £2,000. And is that the killer app? And is that where we're heading for? I don't know.